Hello, everyone. Today we are talking about one of the most important parts of e-commerce business, back office operations. My name is Vladimir and I'm Chief Business Development Officer at GoMage. Before we move to the next step, I'd like to make a quick introduction to our company and what we do. GoMage is Magento development company with over 10 years of experience. Our team of certified Magento developers has successfully delivered over 1,000 projects to business of different sizes and locations. We are a full-range Magento development company and provide such services as Magento development, Magento migration, PWA development, Magento and server support, and many others. Many know Magento as a developer of powerful Magento extensions. Our newest addition is GoMage PWA theme, which allows you quickly adding a PWA storefront to your Magento 2 website. I'm here today with our partner Alex Weston, channel account manager from Brightpearl. So, Alex, could you please tell us a few words about you and your company?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having us, first and foremost, and great to be here. So Brightpearl is a digital operations platform, which is 100% built for retail. So when we talk about operations, we're referring to all of the steps that take place in the back office or after a consumer has hit the buy button. So that can be everything from order management to inventory management, shipping and fulfillment, all of the things that happen in between that. So you as a merchant can scale your business and keep your customers satisfied and coming back. And especially during times of change, as the market gets even more competitive, that becomes even more important. So I guess we'll touch on that in a minute.
Thank you, Alex. So now that we have more of an understanding of what to do at GoMage and Brightbow, so let's dive into a topic today. 2020 has been a year of changes. All the plans and predictions went sideways because of COVID-19 pandemic. The e-commerce industry is at the center of all the changes. It's believed that e-commerce went through the transformation and it's predicted to have such a transformation for next 10 years. The worldwide lockdown changed customer behavior. Customers are exploring the new ways of shopping. Instead of in-person purchases, they are finding new ways of shopping. During the first part of 2020, customers of the USA alone spent more than 350 billion in online shopping. The number is 30% up compared to the same period in 2019. So, Alex, have you made any kind of deep research on this question?
Mm. Yeah, it's really good point, and obviously everyone knows the impact that the pandemic has had on online shopping. What we've seen is that there's been a steady shift towards e-commerce, obviously happening over the last few years, but COVID-19 has obviously accelerated that growth massively. And according to a report by Adobe that was released in June, they found that total online spending in May hit 82 billion, which is pretty staggering, and it's up 77% in the same period last year. So a massive, massive increase. As a result of that growth, obviously, which has happened basically overnight, that's caused a drastic shift in the way that consumers want to buy, and therefore the way that merchants have had to sell. So we actually researched this exact topic and found that 78% of American consumers will be buying online more frequently over the next 12 months. And that's with 55% saying they've now bought products online that they previously only ever bought in physical stores. So obviously there's some growth there. But even more interesting is that 2/3 of consumers say that within the next 5 years, they can only see themselves shopping online. So if you can imagine a world where you never go into a brick and mortar store, some consumers are at the point where they can envisage that world. And then finally, 56% of consumers plan to take advantage of flexible fulfillment options like buy online, pick up in store, or curbside pickup over the next year. So these kind of influences from the pandemic have created a new type of consumer, really, and a consumer that retailers are sort of forced to start adhering to if they want to remain competitive. So that can include offering new ways of fulfillment, selling on new channels, or even offering different delivery options or extended return windows just to remain flexible, but still draw the consumer in as a result of some of the changes in those habits.
Well, That is really interesting results. But sure, of course, changes impacted not only customers but sellers also.
Yeah,
While offline stores went through very turbulent times, online retailers were witnessing a huge spike of demand. However, not all retailers were prepared for the changes that arise,
no.
such as unexpected delays in shipping and delivery were one of the main challenges. Customers had to wait for a week to get their orders. When Amazon couldn't avoid the issues, shock shortage, and another problem that sellers weren't prepared for. This problem is closely associated with the previous one. Merchants couldn't replenish inventory in time, thus
Yeah.
using a lot of potential sales. Changes in customers' behavior is also a very important feature that should be discussed, and it increased traffic to websites. Since sellers hadn't prepared their servers for such huge spike of traffic, they often failed to provide high performance. In some cases, servers crashed under their loads. So, Alex, how do sellers adapt to the new reality? And can you highlight pitfalls and share the best practices for the merchants?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the points that you've raised there are absolutely vital, and some of the stuff that you've brought up is has obviously been key to merchants in the pandemic. Um, I think whether you're going online for the first time or if you've seen large spikes in sales or big declines, even if you're adding a new sales channel, or a pandemic hits, one thing is certain, and that's that agility and flexibility are the kind of keys if any merchant wants to survive at any time, really. Um, One of the areas that retailers are really focusing on is the move to direct to consumer, and this is particularly true of B2B merchants. Even pre-pandemic, this had seen a ton of growth, but is something, a trend that we've definitely noticed. Um, with so many retail stores also closing from COVID, it's definitely a path that will look more attractive to companies as well. But selling direct changes the way that you buy, the way that you sell, the way that you forecast. It basically changes how you run everything in the back office, including your warehouse, how you staff your business, how you take payments, use reports, everything else in between. So there's definitely a significant change in strategy that has to come with making the shift from a B2B model to a direct to consumer model. Um, and of course, one of the biggest things to focus on is maintaining a frictionless shopping experience. So making it really easy for consumers to make their purchases, and that's largely because consumer expectations are that they expect what they ordered when they ordered it, and if you miss the mark on those expectations, it's pretty tough to recover from that. Um, in a similar vein as direct to consumer is merchants who are exploring adding new sales channels altogether. So we've seen that selling online obviously is a increasingly competitive and complicated process. But the most successful brands make their goods available on all kinds of different channels. In addition to their own sites, they sell through third-party platforms like Amazon, eBay, and many more different marketplaces as well. But this also opens up a lot of opportunity to mismanage inventory. Out of stocks can happen frequently, maybe even overselling a product, which is pretty damaging consequences. It's really important to think about how to manage these back office areas like inventory as you consider adding those new channels. Um, and then there's also been a shift in expectations when it comes to flexibility around shopping experiences, so especially around fulfillment. So we talked already about buy online, pick up in store and curbside, how many retailers are saying that they're going to start to utilize that over the next 6 months. Well, it's around a quarter of retailers that plan to add that to their arsenal of different things that they offer, and that trend has already been massive pre-COVID. And then the final thing really is around implementing new technology, which is actually related to everything that I've mentioned on this piece already. Retailers are adding to their tech stack to manage each of these processes better, but technology is what really lets them do their jobs better and with greater efficiency. So with so much growth happening in e-commerce, almost overnight, finding and implementing the right technology to be able to support that growth, manage the different channels, avoid things like stock outs and mismanaging inventory, is critical to long-term success, but also allows merchants to be a lot more adaptable in times of change, whether that be a pandemic or throughout other business change as well.
Thank you very much, Alex. And I'm sure that it's really extremely useful and important guidelines for the merchants.
Yeah.
But in a matter of fact, the changes in customer shopping behavior and the growing number of online merchants create another challenge: acquiring new customers. Merchants trying to sell more and get more customers are implementing new systems and new ways of selling. Thus, the cost of customer acquisition is not only growing because of sellers are adding more and more tools to their arsenal. Things like PPC, agency costs, website support costs, email automation, and the list goes on and on. And it's becoming increasingly competitive to stay afloat and prosper in the new reality.
Mm.
Today, getting the store online is only step one in the process. There is far more to make success in the e-commerce world than that. Many aspiring sellers don't understand the real challenge, and work starts after customers press the buy button. There are a lot of processes that come after this action. Through they are invisible to the customers, they take a lot of time and consume a considerable sum out of the business budget. So, Alex, can you advise the merchants on what to focus on for the successful online store management? And what about, do they need to think first?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right in the sense of that acquisition is obviously a massive part of e-commerce, and getting new customers through the door is huge. But the back office is often neglected in terms of the part of the customer experience, or its role as a part of the customer experience. So with so many new online shoppers, new ways of selling for retailers, a heightened focus on implementing the right technology, it's really, really important, not only to keep up with the trends, but also to nail that experience. At the end of the day, the good experience that they have with a brand is what's going to encourage a customer to come back, and buy from you again. We all know that the cost to merchants of acquiring new customers is growing from adding more
Yeah.
and more tools to their tech stack. Things like PPC, agency costs, all those things that you just talked about, have pretty much doubled the cost of customer acquisition in the last 5 years for retailers. Um, so merchants pretty much always lose money on the first sale at the moment, and that's because of those increasing costs. So it's really important to think about the long-term value of customers that you're acquiring, and in particular what you can do to ensure that subsequent sales happen. So this whole idea is even more important, as the industry changes from the impacts of COVID, but sees a number of businesses going online for the first time ever. But it's new and unfamiliar to those businesses, especially if you're just jumping into direct consumer for the first
Mhm.
time. Um, it means that there's a lot of businesses that are forced to kind of figure out this whole customer experience, and do it really quickly as well. So what we're seeing is that those businesses jump into online selling without really figuring out how they'll maintain that healthy customer experience. Things are happening like orders are getting backed up, they're running out of inventory, they're struggling to figure out multi-channel returns process, for example, can be cumbersome or non-existent, and it stops customers coming back because they have such a terrible experience. And what makes it even worse is that they found that today's online consumers, are really vocal about these bad experiences, and really unforgiving as well. They don't just sit at home and get upset about these negative experiences, but they go online, they use review sites, and they voice those concerns and end up, in theory, telling the world about it, which actually has a negative effect on customer acquisition in the long run as well.
Yeah, yeah, you're totally right. That's a lot of pressure for merchants today. The study of customer behavior is a great importance now. So, can you share some of your experience regarding this question?
Yeah, I think when you think about customer behavior, one of the obvious places to look is around reviews and what's written and shared with the world, and largely because they're sort of the basis of many buying decisions. So in research that we've done, we found that over 90% of shoppers say ratings are important to their buying decision.
Mhm,
So it just goes to show how much
mhm,
the influence of what other people are saying about the customer experience are important. And 95% will read online reviews before making a purchase. So In the past, when maybe an address was pasted onto a shipping label incorrectly, or the wrong item was picked in the warehouse, or the order wasn't fulfilled in time, those experiences are no longer acceptable. 90% of shoppers will stop doing a business with a brand if they have a bad experiences. So pretty much 9 out of 10 times, if someone has a bad experience with a brand, they're never coming back again. You're never going to get that person to come and buy from that merchant again. Um, and now, even more so, those experiences turn into a group of angry and frustrated online messages that not only impact the likelihood of that particular customer coming back, but also impacts the acquisition of all of those other customers that we talked about before as well. So it has a double negative impact for lots of merchants. If they don't get this right, and customers voice their frustration, then then it can be pretty detrimental to a merchant.
Well, that sounds interesting and very challenging for online merchants.
Yeah.
But why do customers get such a negative experience with brands, and how can merchants avoid it?
So it's a really good question, and I think it comes back in part to the kind of agility and getting the right foundational pieces in place that we talked about before, in terms of having the right technology as the foundation, but also being agile as a business. Perhaps most surprising though is our research into why some of the negative reviews happen. And obviously, everyone's had experiences where products are broken or the product doesn't perform as advertised. But lots of consumers these days are pretty clued up on what they want the product to do. They've done a lot of research in terms of getting the right product. Um, and when you exclude those types of situations, we found that 77% of poor reviews are directly related to issues that people have after clicking the buy button. So 77% of negative reviews are really down to operational things like customer service, deliveries, inventory, fulfillment, returns, all of the things that we've been talking about are processes that happen in the back office. So it's often things that happen in the back office, mispicks and packs of items, for example, that lead to those negative reviews and that poor experience, and really stop those consumers coming back to buy from that merchant again.
Yeah, it's very important and interesting indeed. But the question arises, how can merchants organize their operations so that they won't have any problems with customers? And can you shed some light on the questions as an expert of this field?
Yeah, I think there's a few ways that we can talk about, and a few areas that it's important to look at in terms of getting the operations done right for every sale. Um, Firstly, of course, I think we should talk about syncing inventory across all sales channels. Um, any inventory system that any merchant has to be able to log and account for orders that come from anywhere that they're selling on. So by having all of these channels communicating with each other with the back office, you'll have much more accurate records of stock, help you avoid things like overstocking and overselling that we mentioned before, but also helps to prepare for things like demand surges, and also being able to quickly liquidate any low performing stock as well, which actually takes me on to demand and inventory planning. So our jobs would be a lot easier if we could predict the future. But since we can't predict the future and no one has a crystal ball here, I guess lots of merchants probably wish that they did have that this year, especially. But instead, brands need to be able to make educated and intelligent predictions based on real data. And with that data, you can understand demand, how that demand fluctuates. And even if you can't see into the future, it helps you to ensure that you have the right stock on hand, and also optimize cash flow and spend money on the products that you know are going to sell as well. So demand and inventory planning, and an inventory management system are two of the kind of key things here. And then you've also got automated order processing. So thinking about how you process orders is obviously critical to back office operations, but pretty much the faster and more efficiently that you can process orders, the faster consumers get their goods, the happier they are, and the more likely they are to buy from you again. But you want your team to work smarter, not harder. So you want them to, you want the technology that automates those orders that are coming in, and follow normal fulfillment processes for all of the ordinary orders. But then anything abnormal that needs a bit more care and attention, you want that to be flagged. And then the last point to really touch on here is the returns side of things, which is a bit of a necessary evil. But even with the best and slickest logistics, e-commerce stores will always need to manage returns. Customers are always going to return goods. When they're returning a product, in most instances, they're likely a little irritated already that they've had to return the product. But it makes the merchant's job even harder. They have to dig themselves out of an already deep hole. So many successful merchants have one thing in common, really, and that's that they don't make issues with returns, basically. So if a customer isn't satisfied, they're able to negotiate exchanges and refunds really easily. And as much as possible, and within the reason of business and profits, you obviously want to emulate this kind of hassle-free returns policy. So hopefully that kind of gives an idea of some of the areas that merchants can focus on. Just to kind of summarize, I guess I've talked a lot just there, but inventory management, demand forecasting, and hopefully managing stock in the right ways, automating so that it's scalable and that you can manage ordinary orders really easily, and then having hassle-free returns as part of an acquisition strategy, but also to improve the customer experience, can really help to eliminate some of those 77% of negative reviews that we talked about.
Alex, thank you very much for that great insights. Yeah, you're right. The efficient management of all back office operations is the best decision that business can make today during the times of huge competition. Thankfully, for Magento store owners, Brightpearl provides all features needed out of the box. There is an extension for Magento 2 stores, so you won't have any trouble connecting your store with Brightpearl. After you have it installed and configured correctly, you will have access to the following features like inventory management across different sales channels, orders management through all steps, picking, packing, and shipping, payments processing and management, prices management across all sales channels, including Magento Store, and shipping methods management and status tracking. And if you have any questions regarding to work with Brightpearl, you can always ping Alex and his colleagues. And if you need help with Brightpearl integration with your Magento website, the GoMage team will be happy to assist you. So huge thank you to everyone for your attention.
Thank you.
Goodbye.